Coming up next is the Microboard H400UHD. This is another 4K 40-inch monitor from Korea. In general, I really can't sing the praises of 4K and 40 inches for daily desktop computing or serious power user computing. It's really, I mean, the only thing that would replace it and be better would be 5K and like 45 or 46 inches. And I don't know if I'll go for that, but hey, I'll try anything once. I don't know. So we're taking a look today at the Microboard 4K monitor. Now this is of course an ultra high definition monitor. It has one DisplayPort input, two HDMI inputs, one of which is HDMI 2.0, VGA, and you've got SPDIF optical, and you've got the USB service port. Now the particular one that we're looking at today is Freesync compatible. This seems to be the same controller from the same manufacturer that we looked at on the Wasabi Mango and the AMH 409 monitor, 40-inch 4K monitor. But the thing with this monitor is that I think it's basically the same electronics. It's just packaged a little differently, and the packaging on this monitor is gorgeous. I usually don't really gush too much over the aesthetic, but man, I really have to hand it to these Korean companies. They really have come up with something interesting from an aesthetic standpoint. If I could get a monitor like this with absolutely perfect innards, I would probably be willing to pay a premium price for that. This is an all-metal, solid construction case. It has an ultra small bezel all the way around. It's metal front and back. It has a Vesa 100mm mount and a Vesa 200mm mount at the back. It's mostly black, but it's got a little bit of chrome accents. The buttons are on the bottom instead of the back, as we've seen on the other 4K 40-inch monitors. And there's also this little sort of reflective silver thing for the infrared. It's just such a simple, clever, sort of industrial solution. This is almost like the monitor that I imagine myself using in some sort of post-apocalyptic scenario. I really like the design aesthetic of the monitor, and usually those kinds of things don't excite me. Mechanically, this thing is a very sturdy monitor because it's all metal. Now out of the box it does come with two metal feet that you can bolt onto the sides and use it. It really doesn't give it much lift. But this monitor is very lightweight. This is the lightest 4K monitor that we've looked at yet. It's about 22 pounds or about 9.97 kilos. This monitor does have a 100mm Vesa mount, so that means it's compatible with a lot of existing computer monitor Vesa mounting solutions. Now, the screw holes are actually very short depth. You're going to have to be careful. This is sort of a con on this monitor. When you get Vesa screws, you need to be sure to use not very long screws or use some spacers so that the screws don't go all the way in. The mounting holes are in the back metal frame of the monitor. It's plenty sturdy enough, but there's nothing that stops the screws from bottoming out into the printed circuit board on the inside of the display. So if you are going to use the Vesa mount screws, be sure that you use screws of the appropriate length, or that if your screws are really long, you use spacers, washers, plastic washers, whatever, so that the screw doesn't go too far into the case on this. Now you do have the choice of 100 by 100 or 200 by 100 for this particular display, so keep that in mind. Like the A409, this display also has an on-screen crosshair option, so that's pretty cool. Now in terms of testing, the results for this monitor were very similar to the testing on the A409. That means you're going to see a little bit of color bleed if you're on a 50% gray background for, the color bar tests and things like that. This display is advertised as a flicker-free design, and from my eye, there's no flicker that I can detect. Like the A409, you will have to go into the on-screen display, configure it to be in English, first of all, and second of all, depending on what's important to you, response time, color accuracy, other options, you'll want to play with the processing setting on the display. So it has a couple of different modes for how it will display and reproduce colors, and also how quickly it responds. So in testing this with a CRT, this monitor also runs about 4 frames behind a CRT. That's about 64 milliseconds. But playing with the on-screen display, you can shave about 1 frame, about 16 milliseconds, maybe 20 milliseconds off of the response time. Taking a bunch of pictures with a camera, it averaged out to be about 18-19 milliseconds. So I figure that's about 1 frame, give or take. I would like to see displays that have a higher response time, but this is a SuperMVA panel like the others, so it's got pretty rich blacks, unlike an IPS panel that the blacks are not quite as deep. The blacks on this panel are very deep, and the backlight can get very bright. So all in all, in terms of how this monitor is put together and its guts, it's pretty similar to the A409. Now, I don't want to say identical, but for just a couple of days of using it and putting it together, they seem pretty similar. But the design aesthetic on this one, plus the use with monitor arms, this monitor really wins it for me in terms of the design aesthetic. And usually I don't really care about that kind of thing, but I really like the all metal design of this thing, and I really like that it's only 22 pounds. That opens up a whole universe of possibilities for standard monitor mount solutions. With heavier monitors, you're pretty much looking at a TV mount, and they don't really have all the options in terms of tilt, swivel, lift, that kind of thing. The Microboard company also offers some really nice stands that will mount on their monitors that are also this sort of post-industrial thing. You can check it out on the Korean language microboard.kr website, and you can see sort of the industrial design aesthetic that they're going for in their stands and that kind of thing. Now, these displays are lesser expensive, so they come with the less fancy stands, but hopefully we can find a source on the internet for the fancier Microboard Vesa stands. I mean, those stands are really, really nice. This monitor is so nice that even with one of those stands or a monitor arm type situation in a corporate setting, this monitor would look really good. It would look really industrial. It almost looks, you know, Tony Stark. I have a hard time believing that I am saying these things, but you just have to look at it. It's got this matte black finish. It's all metal. It's cool to the touch, still very lightweight even though it's made of metal. And then these chrome accents, they really do it for me. Now, it seems like there are some larger mounting options on the sides here, because it does have built-in 10-watt speakers, but I don't really use those, and we didn't test those because we're going to use it as a computer monitor. There are some mounting screws on the side things here that'll take larger diameter screws, but this is not 200 millimeter. This is a little bit more than 200 millimeter in one direction and a little bit less in the other. So I'm not really sure what kind of a mount that is. Depending on the Vesa mount that you have, you may be able to get one of those universal mounts that is like just 4 positionable arms and could mount it that way, maybe for like a television mount. But if it were me, I would rather use the 100 millimeter Vesa mount or the 200 millimeter Vesa mount, because I think that's going to be better in the long run. Now, I had some weird problems when I was testing Freesync with this particular monitor. I think the Freesync support, it's got it, but it's going to need a software update to really be complete. So at 50 frames per second on a fresh boot of the monitor, it basically works okay. But after it's been on for a while, or after you sweep through the FPS, so like you go from 50 to 51 to 52 to 55, maybe dipping down to 45 and then back out again, the display has a tendency to black out or do this weird artifacting thing, if you can see that, where it kind of jitters. I think this is probably a bug in the Freesync implementation on the monitor. So for all intents and purposes, just pretend this is not really a Freesync display when you get it. It's definitely not as smooth an experience as we've seen on, say, the Wasabi Mango. So hopefully they'll fix that with a software update. So what's the overall verdict? Well, like the other Korean monitors, this is not a perfect monitor, but for the money, it's a really good deal. I'm never going back from 4K and 40 inches. I'm going to work in 4K at 40 inches across all of my operating systems. In Windows 10, where you've got the quadrant maximization, and Linux being able to have a teeny tiny font that's still readable, I mean, I can get 4 columns of terminals that are insanely wide, and I have no problems at all reading the text. So, yeah, I don't know what to tell you. You have to try a 40-inch monitor. It's really insane. It's life-changing, and the design aesthetic of this monitor is pretty cool. If you don't believe me about 4K and 40 inches changing your life, head on over to the forums at techsyndicate.com, because we've got some really long threads about some of the other Korean monitors, and pretty much everybody universally is like, oh my god, why didn't I do this sooner? This is amazing. And it's so funny to me, because I thought that, you know, a couple of 27-inch monitors and a couple of side monitors would probably be all that I really need to do work. No. I can't go back from 4K and 40 inches now. It's just not going to happen. You know what I need? 8K and 40 inches. Then maybe I'll get the pixel doubling, super text, sharp, whatever. But I still need the 4K of screen real estate. So, I'll see you in the forums at techsyndicate.com. I'm Wendell. I'm signing out, and I'll see you later.